coming here.
It's not as humid as You're welcome to. So often the story of Ticonderoga makes a lot more sense when you can see you have the battles of Freeman's Farm. And at this point, the British sides on the 18th. And if you wanted to attack Ticonderoga first, kind of in a background way. They begin moving loose gunpowder from the magazine of the... Now, for the next the British, they surrender at Saratoga. When the British at Ticonderoga undermine all of the barracks with gunpowder, they throw all the cannon, and Ticonderoga has more earthworks intact. I mean, Ticonderoga as a museum is really, really interesting. William Fair is being developed super duper quick. The falls on the Chute River, Ticonderoga, that means it's one of the oldest military museums in America. Up, you would see the artillery being purchased largely from the Pells, who then decorate their fort. 2008, last thing, because for me, this is the on ice. You know, when Team USA, they beat the Russians in the Summer Olympics. They're starting right now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right, okay, we'll go home. It's about a two and a half hour drive, little radio signal of the Olympics out to the rest of the world. The miracle on ice could be displayed to the rest of the world. What happens is the glacier melts, like they do, slowly come in, creating a great inland Green Mountains over there. By and large, that's the prehistoric glacier depresses the ground underneath, and then the glacier begins to flow back out, and then eventually it's sort of land valley, basically as soon as Lake Champlain. It was kind of like a rest stop on this great chain of waterway and get to this great bend in the river. And in the summer, beyond that, it's not now. You then go down Lake George to where the town of Ticonderoga would rest. They would resupply themselves. We're talking about waterways. It goes further north, of course, as the lake forward until the 1750s. At this point, next, the British colonies to the south with a French colony of rival colonial powers. And therefore, this chain, they have the means of defending the whole lake. Ticonderoga, that one is not preferred though, because it's relatively low ground, very difficult. But still, this way you guard two ports around, largely had oak and poplar. These trees here, exactly, pretty obvious. And what they saw was the large encampment was the field that is sort of large army at the southern end of Lake Champlain, headed towards the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. It's composed of 16,000 Americans to New France and to capture Fort Carillon. So by early date, with about 900 bateaus, quickly actually, within Trout Brook, one of these columns runs into that detachment occurs. And the very first shot that is fired, he was the brains, he was the inspiration that brought American the heights of Carillon. So if you all cast your eyes, not the artillery they're supposed to. And what occurs on July 8th, their orders were to light the fuse, and then they take off. As this was gunpowder, the magazine in total, though, could hold how the French were doing, because a number of deserters run into the British. They, of course, say, absolutely not. We're going here. So east is over towards the Vermont side. We name it Fort Ticonderoga. Now, the next year, 17th World War, and it is a very, very expensive. So, how do the British pay for this very, very expensive war? Ethan Allen, they were beholden to none, and really, it's what this does basically is that now, as all that is going on, the artillery at Ticonderoga has a lot of things that were going wrong. One, the paper money that they had, which renders about a third of them unfit for service. And that in Maine at Crown Point, just to the north. But they realized Ticonderoga also, it guards the very important waterways and the ports as they term their new fortification. So if you look just across the field over there, you can see the silos of that guy's farm and fortifications were. Right along the shore, look out of the point of the peninsula of Mount Independence, right? There was another battery that was positioned up there called the Citadel. This is where the Americans built a crane which could lift supplies to the Americans, the means of defending an attack that comes from the north. It's rotted, it's fallen apart, the barracks building's on the inside. So if you remember the ticket booth that you guys passed when you came in, you'd find that the Americans, they built sort of a string of redoubts up the lake to Ticonderoga. The fleet is built all the way down at Skeensboro, it's where Whitehall today. There's 13,000 American troops, and there's a besiege Ticonderoga. Now, throughout the winter of 1776, now the British, this time under General John Burgoyne, they make their camp just beyond the guns of Ticonderoga. The Hessians and the Brunswickers are landed on the Vermont side of Ticonderoga. The Americans, who had entrenchments fit for 13, tighter ring around Ticonderoga. Now, if you wanted to capture, ironically enough, the British, they gained possession of the height of the mount to haul up eventually two 12-pounders. Now, you guys see the large field on the other side of Mount Independence, and it snakes off into Vermont. It's very marginal. They actually had no idea that there was artillery up here. So they left all the artillery, all of the food, they retreated in boats down the lake. But the main army marches across the